Hello folks, it's Alan Kay. We'll be starting in 30 seconds. Hello folks, I'm Alan Kay, delighted to be with you today. Just like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a fully recovered ad guy, including a manager of an advertising business, but that was quite a while ago. And for the last 15 odd years I've been in change as a facilitator of strategy, things like customer experience and stakeholder consultation. And I work in many different sectors, banks to children's aid as I like to boast, and cross-functional, many different kinds of functions, actuaries to architects. And I'm pretty deeply solution-focused trained. I got my training at the SFBT International Group at Hinks Delcrest in Toronto, where I was privileged to learn something that's pretty important. The client's the expert in the change they want to make. Everybody has to write a book these days, so there's my book. With the exorbitant title, Fry the Monkeys, Create a Solution, mostly title designed to get people's attention. Let me give you an overview of this session. I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership, but as a context for coaching. Leadership happens up and down organizations these days. It's not just at the top, and it makes a huge difference when people are applying conscious leadership. We're going to experience, learn, and use some of the key tools for solution-focused coaching, some of the techniques. We're going to discover some of the principles underpinning the approach and explore a few tools for everyday use. You'll find in lots of these slides, in fact, tools you can use. I'll give you an example. There's going to be one once or twice. We're going to do some scaling exercises, so please use the slides for your own use later on. And of course, we will be providing you with a download. So 3 things to cover off. I'm going to start with telling you about a solution-focused case from the UK, just to validate all the claims I'm making. Give you the perspective in leadership and let you do a little bit of self-assessment. And then we'll go into the team coaching perspective and loads of practice. I've got lots of slides today, which we're going to go through quickly. Many of the slides are instructions or requests for you to share your thinking. And so I'm going to have you working probably as hard as I am. Let's begin. In the chat box, would you enter 4 or 5 words to describe how you see this session being useful to you? So if you can complete the sentence, it will help me, and I can get some sense of how that might be useful too. So if you wouldn't mind going into your question section. Be a more effective leader. Assist others. Tackle difficult situations. Yes. That is the chat box. Yes. Work better with the team. Facilitate change. Absolutely. Help me in my new position as HR manager. Well done. Great. Congratulations. Work as a team. Lead a disparate group of employees. Disparate is something that we pretty much face all the time. Good. Better mentor and coach. Excellent. All right, so thank you for that. Let me go straight to the case. The reason I share this case is it shows that the soft skills we learn in solution focus coaching can provide hard results. So it's from a colleague of mine in the UK. I've actually worked myself in this College of North East London. So Sean Lincoln was my colleague, and Kathy Walsh was with the college. They had a program in place at Canel, it's called Towards Excellence. And this was a part of London with some interesting challenges, lots of new immigrants and so on. The program was centered on learning principles, building a learning community, using leadership, and excellent staff performance. And solution focus was used throughout the program to help make a difference. And here's what the staff fed back: that in the evaluation, it was provide empowering personal experiences, a rare opportunity for reflection, a different and positive methodology, enabling and confidence building for coachees to find their own solutions to specific leadership issues. So that would be the coaches coaching each other as coachees, finding their own solutions. And then succession planning, capacity building. So it really helped them support, as it puts here, the middle leaders get to the future the way they want it to be. The evidence that it works is even stronger in the numbers. So the qualification numbers over 4 years went up. More students doing well in the class. The quality of the teaching also went up because the feedback on unsatisfactory learning went down dramatically. And here's the hard edge one: the qualifications improved financial return. It meant that the school could apply for grants, etc., based on proof of performance. So that's just a quick one on excuse me, the impact that the solution focus can have. I said we're going to tackle leadership as a context for coaching. Most organizations today have started talking about leadership throughout the organization, not just from the top down. And we know lots of these famous leaders, men and women. The only issue about women leaders is that history books don't highlight them as much as some of those guys. But the big question about leadership is, as it says in the top there, it inspires us to go to places we don't expect. Often people say you have to be born a leader. Perhaps on the top line that's true, inspiring people to go places they don't expect. But we can learn leadership skills because it's also about influence, teamwork, effective delegation, coaching and collaboration, and so on. I said about women leaders. Here's a woman leader, recently portrayed by Kate Blanchett as Queen Elizabeth I. She was not born into leadership. She had to learn it herself under some very difficult situations. Excuse me, coughing. So let's have a couple of definitions of leadership. The process of social influence in which one person is able to enlist the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a common task. Another perspective is leadership's ultimately about creating a way for people to contribute to making something extraordinary happen. Excuse me a second. Why do you always get a frog in your throat at the worst time? So let's have you do something, which is a poll. And the question is, what role does leadership development play in your professional and personal growth? None at all, a little, quite a lot, make or break my future. So if you wouldn't mind responding to the poll, which is going to come up on your screen any second now. So if you just click on the one that you feel applies mostly to you. Great. So clearly the emphasis is on quite a lot, and that would be certainly in keeping with what you see quite commonly in most organizations and sectors. So thank you for that. One of the things that we talk about, are you born a leader? And the answer is possibly if you're the inspirational type. But when it comes to learning leadership skills, how do we unpack it? And one of the questions that we can look at is, what are people's leadership styles? And here's some examples. There's a people-oriented leader who supports, develops people. There's the task-oriented leader who concentrates on tasks and assignment. There's the servant leader who facilitates goal accomplishment. The transactional leader who rewards or punishes performance. We've probably all met those folks. And transformational leader who motivates the team to be effective and efficient. And finally, the environmental leader who nurtures group organization. There's not, some of these are some overlap. The main point is that there is no one style that works. It's usually a blend of two, maximum three. Some people are very focused on one area, but most of us don't manage all six. We manage two or three. And I'd just like to illustrate the point. If we look at the leadership style of this individual from history, I think we all know who he is, Jesus, and you ask people, what leadership style did he have? Many people will say things like servant leadership, leading by example, etc., etc. If we look at the leadership style of this individual, people will say this is a person who's autocratic, authoritarian, not interested in other people, etc., etc. The question I have is, what do they have in common? And the answer for me is quite simple. They both know how to assert themselves. How to assert themselves. The big question about the two different styles of asserting themselves is that one of them has remained in our consciousness for 2,000 years. The other fades, certainly as a model. So this leads us to another aspect of asserting themselves, people asserting themselves. In the past, the leader was a person who knew how to tell, provided instructions, and usually barked them out to the organization and expected people to fall in line. Kind of the hero leader. There's less and less of that these days. In fact, Peter Drucker says the leader of the future will be a person who knows how to ask. And that's where we're going to go in a few minutes, about how to ask better questions in solution focus. Won't go into the next slide, but let you think about this post-session. What's your dominant style and what's your secondary style? It's good for you to take a look at that and think about it. Instead, let's just go to this question, get you doing something again. I'd like you to scale your leadership skills. And note that this is a very common solution-focused tool, particularly in coaching. So you may want to remember this approach if you haven't done it before. So scale of 1 to 10. 1 is I'm just from Mars, and 10 is the highest. I sit on the right hand of the Supreme Being on leadership skills. So we'd like you to rate your current leadership skills. Where you put yourself on the ladder, whether it's 3 or 7, isn't a big issue at the moment. It's just a means for you to do a self-assessment. So would you, in your text box, the questions box, enter the number that you've given yourself. It won't be public. And then just 4 or 5 words. What pleases you most about your leadership? What pleases you most about your leadership? Some 7s and 5s, that's great. Great, some really good numbers here. And transparency and listening. People tend to like me. I'm a good speaker. Get things achieved. Good listening skills. Helping people be their best. People ask me for advice. Supportive team motivator. All of these are really powerful leadership skills. I think the thing that, again, I would go back to that previous slide and give you a tip, which is to, in a quiet moment, go and look at those leadership styles I outlined. They come from research, and ask yourself which is my dominant style and which are my secondary and supporting styles. So thank you for your input there. If we move on to coaching within the context of leadership, let's ask ourselves about solution-focused team coaching. What is it? And here's my answer. It's just asking better questions. And why is that? Well, as wonderful woman Mary Goldberg said, a powerful question alters all thinking and behaving that occurs afterwards. And in Solution Focus, we simply try to ask better questions. The wonderful Yvonne Dolan put it another way. She said, the questions we ask shape the answers our clients give us. So we're going to look at that. And notice from Yvonne's statement, there's very little about directive. Remember that leadership telling style that's no longer as important as it used to be? So that then leads us to the question about non-directive approach in solution-focused coaching, which is that the coaching is an interactive and developmental process where the coach enables coachees to find their own solutions to discover new opportunities and implement actions. I love this line because today what we must do is leverage the diversity of the people around us, both laterally, our colleagues, our staff, and even our bosses, making the most of what it is that they've got to offer by us acting as facilitators, by listening, asking questions, and enabling the coaches to discover for themselves what is right for them. And if we do that, we leverage diversity, we build strength in them, we learn to delegate, to let go so they can get on with it. There are so many benefits in this approach. It's not the only approach. There's still room for telling and there's still room for some mentoring. Let's look at your coaching skills, back to that scaling exercise. If you could remember, 1 is I'm from Mars and 10 is I'm from the right-hand side of somebody really important. Just give us your coaching skills, put in the number, and similar question, what pleases you most about your coaching capabilities? Some great numbers here. Persuasive, hear ideas from folks. Enthusiasm, modest style. Yes, modify the style to meet personality differences. They're always going to be there. Discovering possibilities together. Letting go of control, phenomenally important. As a parent, I had to learn that a long time ago, and it's still something I struggle with. Let go of control. Continually learn how to listen better. That is a skill that we can never, ever stop learning. That's great. Thank you very much. So let's turn to some of the more philosophical statements first that will give us a context for the solution-focused model and the coaching. From the American writer, philosopher William James, the art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook. And of course, in solution focus, what we tend to want to overlook is people's discussion about problems versus solutions. More on that later. From Gregory Bateson, change is happening all the time. I think we've finally come to understand that because that change is happening all the time, we need to not just learn to accept it, but to leverage it. And Gregory Bateson says our role is to identify useful change and amplify it. If we read our newspapers every day, all we hear about is change, but not always the most positive, and certainly lots of problems. But if you read into the articles, you will find useful change, and that's our job, is to notice what's working in the change versus problem. A wonderful guy called Jim Duval, who was one of the people who trained me at Hinks Delcrest, said people are trying to collaborate all the time in organizations. The difference is just not each other's way. It is inevitable that when an organization has many goals, etc., and people are trying to achieve those goals, that they will try to collaborate to get that to happen, but they're going to do it in distinctive, unusual ways, unique, different ways, which of course results in things like finger pointing in politics. So let's ask another polling question. What role does your coaching play in your daily work with staff and colleagues? None at all, quite a lot, a little, quite a lot, and makes a big difference for them. So we're seeing some good numbers in the middle here, particularly for quite a lot. Yep, it's hovering around 70% for quite a lot. Makes sense. It makes sense. What's interesting is we're in an age now where both coaching and increasingly even mentoring, people are understanding the value of it and seeking it out, both formally and informally. So thank you for that. Let's look at it from another couple of angles. Here's Blaise Pascal, a French mathematician, who said that people are generally better persuaded by the reasons which they have themselves discovered than by those which come into the minds of others. In other words, they persuade themselves using their own thinking. And of course the role of the coach is to help them with that. More recently, David Maister says here, an American management author, he's actually English, and I've had the pleasure of working with him. He says there's a world of difference between being able to solve a client's problem and being able to help the client solve his, her own, or her own problem. Same thinking, just from that angle, enable them to think for themselves. So where does solution focus arrive or help with this kind of thinking? Let's look at the principles. Identify what works and do more of it. Dead simple. And identify what doesn't work, stop doing it, and do something different. And what I would say to that is do what we want to do. Come to that later. And something that's often undervalued, I certainly find in the work I do with clients, the last piece, taking small steps to see the progress. That we can usually get people going on 1 and 2, but slowing them down to see themselves making progress is really critical. And Insoo Kim Berg, one of the founders of the approach, said at times going slow seems to get you there faster. Counterintuitive idea, just as not talking about the problem's a counterintuitive idea, and it works. So let's get to practicing some of this. A little section here called Solution Moments Work, What Works Well, and I'm going to take you through what to overlook. This is based on an exercise by my good friends Mark Ricardo and Paul Z. Jackson from the UK. And they say there's two very different approaches to problem solving. There's the problem focus, which we probably fairly familiar with, and then there's solution focus. I think most people are good at solution focus, just not quite got the framework right yet. Let's take a look at what goes on with problem focus. Understand and diagnose the problem, know what causes the problem, and use the information from the above two to address and fix the problem. It's interesting, there are people in our organizations who are trained to be able to do this effectively. They are the engineers and the mechanics and the scientists. They have ways of unpacking the problem and then putting it back together in the form of a solution. That's why our buildings don't fall down. The issue is on the human side, that's a bit harder. When you approach human issues, you find that this approach slows you down. Let's look at the option, which is to recognize the solution of what's wanted, find know-how, the thing which will contribute to the solution, and interestingly, build the solution, and often the problem goes away. Just one thing about that problem, last statement there. Many of the things that we see as problems are constructs. If the building's burning down and the instruction is to leave it right away, that's not a construct. That's a telling instruction. Call it whatever you want, and we must follow. When we, as humans, indulge in the first column, often we create problems simply by talking about them. And when we switch to the solution focus approach to build the solutions, often what we find is that the problem actually melts away. So that, first of all, how do we do that? Of course, better questions. We point at solutions instead of each other. This comes from Pfeiffer and Sutton, professors at Stanford University. I love it. We point at solutions instead of each other. Okay, let's get you talking. Have a go. Probably be talking to yourself, but let me just take you through the instructions on this. You'll be doing this on a piece of paper. Describe a problem you're having, and you're going to have a minute to do that, and then you're going to answer some questions. So let me first of all get you to describe the problem. It could be the neighbor's dog barking at 2 in the morning. It might be about your staff or your boss or colleagues or whatever, or it could be something from the past. Just write down something quite simple. Now feel free to put as many details as you want. Have a good therapeutic moment. Good. All right. So now you can write this down if you want. Answer the following questions. You're going to have 3 minutes. I'll just go through them slowly, one at a time. Again, remember, we're exploring the problem of what you've got wrong. What's wrong with what you're doing? What's the answer to that one? All right. Why are you doing so badly? And what is the main cause of your difficulty? And here's that old chestnut. Whose fault is it? Usually we don't need a lot of time to address that question. And what are the other things that make it hard? Now we're into causality. And finally, delving into despair. Why will it be difficult for you to do any better? Okay, let's move forward and reframe the same conversation about the problem in this way. Same topic. Answer the following questions on the same issue that you've just been describing. What were you aiming to achieve? How will you know you've achieved it? What will it look like? What was the best you ever did at this thing? In other words, an exception to the problem. And on that occasion, what went well? So now we go in the future and we say, what will be the first signs that you're getting better? What will be the first signs that you're getting better? And one of my favourite questions, help yourself notice what would be happening in the eyes of other people. How will other people notice this improvement? How will they notice the improvement? So let's talk about the differences. Maybe you'd like to just type up some answers in the section. What was different about being asked or asking and being asked the first set of questions? What was different? Yep, the first set focused on blame and negatives. The second set seemed more achievable and positive. The Jack Layton difference, positive approach, good. The second set helps you make, it helps you think about positives. The second set, easier to answer, less blame. Didn't come up with a solution in the first set. That's right. The more we focus on the first set of questions, the further away we get from the solution. The second seemed more positive. Good. Second set, measure progress. Thank you. Second set creates a sense of opening to progress. So, which types of questions are more likely to motivate and empower others to change? I think you know the answer to that, but I think the point is that the second approach, i.e. the solutions-focused approach, helps motivate and empowers others by asking these questions. And if we go to some key points to consider, I'm going to open up for some questions shortly. Ask, not tell. There's a role for telling still in this world as leaders. Usually when it's a very specific instruction. Remember that one I said earlier on. The building is burning. Please leave now. We will be assembling in the front of the lobby or whatever the building in 60 seconds. Very specific. The point about telling is the good modern leader manages the amount of telling they do, less prescribing. Telling when people need specific instructions alone. And the rest of the time helping people understand what they can do by using your instructions and figuring out for themselves through coaching how they will make it happen. Remember, they're the expert, not you. In spite of the way they may be behaving, i.e. not quite in the manner in which we would like them to, they have skills, they have knowledge, they may not be using it, but they have it, and they have some ideas about what to do. And remember, those ideas may not be entirely the way you want them to do it, but if we let them be the expert in understanding what they can do in order to overcome the problem and stop thinking that way and start thinking about solutions, the easier it is for them to leverage the expertise. Our job is to help them surface the expertise. Do you remember those scaling questions? What we were trying to do there was surface our own expertise. And if we did more time, we would have been looking in both cases on the scaling, on the first one with leadership and the second one coaching. We would have said, tell me more specifically about your leadership skills. Tell me more specifically, blah, blah, blah. Enabling ourselves to become even more expert. And that's our job, is to help them be the expert. You don't need to have all the answers. I think that's an issue a lot in organizations today, is that, well, people seem to resist as our directives. They are, in fact, looking for us to have all the answers. And guess what? We frequently don't have them. And so remembering that that if we ask, position them as an expert, albeit on a scale of 1 to 10, a low number, nevertheless we'll use that expertise. We don't have to have all the answers. As a presenter, I'm frequently asked questions by the group, and the first thing I'll do is, not that I don't know the answer, I don't know the answer that will work for them, so I put it back out to the group. And I think in coaching, that's a good principle, is put the question back out to the individual. Find the resources, and immediate small steps will follow. I think you would have seen in that second round of questions, the solutions questions that you were answering, that the minute we start to figure out what it is we want to have happen, and that we've already got some skills and resources to do it, our intelligence takes over. The steps become clear. And usually they are high-quality small steps. So find the resources, and immediate small steps will follow. And enable people to realize and own the choices they have. Go back to something I was talking about earlier on, diversity. We're surrounded by diversity all the time. Diversity up the way in terms of leadership, management, etc., across the way in terms of our colleagues, and particularly down the way in terms of our staff. We don't always have the ideal people around us. I think our job is to leverage what's ideal within them, help them realize what they can do and own the choices, so that we can be seen to be effective leaders using coaching to do things like delegate, clarify, help people understand what they have to do. So, opening up shortly for questions, just a couple more pieces. Get you doing some more work. Suppose, a fabulous solution-focused question. Thinking about using the word suppose is I like to say I'm Harry Potter. I say I'm waved my wand, or Harry McPotter, waved my wand and things are working. You define what time that is. Is it 2 minutes, 2 minutes, or 2 months, or 2 years? Suppose things are working. Based on the 1 to 10 coach scaling number you gave yourself earlier on, that was the second coaching scaling. Based on that number, suppose you moved up 0.5 on the scale. So we're not talking about big jumps, but a small step. What might people notice you doing more of, or instead? Can you type some answers to that in, please? Asking more questions. Less talking in team meetings, talking about yourself, I would imagine. Collaborating, stepping away from my inclination to fix things. Hey, there's one I've been famous for a long time. Less hands-on, more listening. Yeah. Encouraging communication from others. Fantastic. I think if there's one thing that this approach helps us learn to do that's very helpful to other people, is to learn to listen. And that's a hard thing to do, particularly in difficult situations where people may think they're in a crisis, or they're in a big problem mode, and it's very easy for us as leaders to assume that we know what to do. Yes, we know what to do, but will it work for them? So the key skill is in listening, and frankly, shutting down those voices that go on in the back of our head, because we're always keen to tell them what to do. One more. So, thinking of the value of this session, what one thing do you tend to use in your coaching at work? You've talked a little bit about this in the next few days. Think of a project you've got, a meeting you're going to have. Be specific. Unpack those thoughts that you just put in the last section into something very specific that you can do at work, or, as I said, at home. It's a good place to practice this. I try to all the time in the next few days. You could just enter some thoughts. So let go of control. Call on staff, ask more questions, ask what others need to find a solution, provide feedback. Good. Excellent. So now we're going to open it up to take your questions. We've got 15 minutes. I'm just going to look at some of the questions that have already come up, if there have been any. Yeah, Alison, if you wouldn't mind telling some of the questions.
Hi, Alan. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Alison Mullen. I'm the manager of communications and marketing here. I'm not sure. I think I got cut off at the beginning there. Alan, I do have a question here for you.
Yep.
What do we do if they don't want to solve their own problem?
Thank you. go back to Insu's line about small steps. Slow things down to speed them up. Often when that happens, we might get a bit concerned, maybe even panicky. Scale down. So sometimes I find I'm asking a group a question and there's a load of silence in the room. I immediately say to them, something small. When somebody is not interested in finding solutions on their own, I'll tell you a quick story. In a meeting training session in the UK in a college, we had one of those really smart but classic union leaders who main job in life unfortunately appeared to be to prove that management was stupid, and sat with his arms folded for a fair bit of the day, fairly engaged, but making it really clear where he didn't agree. As a presenter to the larger group, I wasn't able to divert into a lot of his issues. We need to get our agenda completed for the day, the training. But I asked somebody afterwards, what has happened in the past with this individual in training sessions? And it was interesting. I was told immediately, oh, he does behave that way in the session, but the next day he usually goes off and adapts, does something different, follows the training. So everybody learns in different ways, and I think when you find people resisting, I think what we have to do is resist our own urgency for them to change. Some more training and solution focus will teach you some of the tools to help make that happen, scaling, etc., etc. Just one quick one. You know, if somebody says on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And they say, I'm a -2, indicating that they don't want to collaborate much in the conversation. You can say, oh, how come it's not a -3? That opens them up to thinking something positive, no matter how small. Hope that answered the question. Any more, Alison?
Yeah, we have quite a few here.
Good.
Good questions too. Next one is, what is the difference between teaching and coaching?
Thank you. Well, that is a great question these days. First of all, in the teaching side, what we're seeing, particularly in adult education, my wife has got a certificate in it, so gives me lectures all the time about how I teach, that we're moving from the sage on the stage, the expert who knows everything, to the guide on the side model. So that's in teaching. My own practice when I am teaching groups is having a tremendous amount of time for them talking, etc., interactive, etc., etc. In coaching, I don't think it's hugely different. It's simply more one-on-one, and you're very clear on helping them learn to think for themselves. In teaching, it all depends on, you might be teaching how to fly an airplane, in which case there's some rules applied to how you fly an airplane. Or if you're teaching them leadership, there's not that many rules, so you're teaching them some soft skills. Be clear on your goals. In coaching, you got to think about their goals. And so the first rule of any coaching is, from a solution-focused perspective, is, so how can I be useful to you in this session today? Find out what their goals are. Having said that, of course, it's good to use that in teaching as well these days. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, that's great. Next one is, someone is looking for some tips here for dealing with someone who doesn't really respond to questions sent by email, or is not really available for meetings, but this person needs them because their input is crucial to moving a project forward and directing staff work.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good. Yes, I think you can, I would begin with a thought about finding other ways to communicate with them, if it's possible, whether it's email or leaving voicemail or physically being with them when you're asking the question. That would be step one. Moving towards not using the mechanical models as much as possible. Then I would say, think about the quality of the questions you're asking them. If you think about some of the solution-focused questions, first of all, one of the golden rules of solution focus is sometimes we are a bit stuck on what to ask them next. And as Jim Duval taught me, he said, there is no such thing as a bad solution focus question. Just throw them out to the person. When somebody's signaling to you that they don't wish to comply, I think asking questions such as, we've got X project on hand. How do you see it being useful to you? Supposing it was a success, what would you be getting from it? And so on. So opening them up to thinking about what would work for them. Always thinking, how can I be helpful to you in this process? Kind of drawing them in towards you. Some scaling. Thinking of all the projects you've got on your plate right now, you probably got quite a lot of high numbers. Where does this one sit? Is it a 2 or a 7? It kind of encourages them to give you some information back. Thin information sometimes, but it allows you then to go on asking more solution-focused questions.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Alan. This person just reminded me that she's talking about a group of people who are maybe not necessarily working well together, and not being very crucial. But I think that's pretty applicable to everyone.
I think the key thought is reduce your own anxiety. By them resisting as a group or individuals, we can get a bit anxious. Remember, they do know the answer. They do want to collaborate, just not their way, or your way, I should say.
Right.
So keep yourself calm, ask some solution-focused questions. Don't expect a big change, and watch what happens.
Perfect. All right, I have another question here. Problems are usually multidimensional. Often there is a need to ensure everyone has a common take on what the issues are in order for constructive discussion to occur. Is there a good way to do this without making things more complex rather than less clear?
Yes, absolutely. I have practiced this many times across the country. When you do stakeholder consultations on things like government policy, everybody wants to tell you what the problem is, and all day long. So the technique I use is my language. I say we're going to discuss the policy or whatever, and we're going to get your input on what it is that needs to be fixed. But we're going to position it as clarifying. And so what you try to do is clarify what they want to be better, not what the problem is. Because yes, problems are multidimensional, but quite often unpacking them at length doesn't yield much in the way of insights. It is important not to just ignore them, but to put them in the context of clarification. And a technique to use when people are getting a bit carried away with unpacking too much, because that's what we have to manage, is to constantly be saying to them, that's interesting, i.e. it is interesting, and then we use the line take it seriously, not literally, by saying to them, so what would you want to be different? Start them talking about what they want, because that's what people do when they get stuck in the problem. They forget to talk about what they want to have happen.
Great. And one last question here. What if you are the only one who sees a problem?
Then you are the only one who sees a problem. But that's a great one, because sometimes people are in various stages of denial, or they just don't have the information or the perspectives, whatever. And so they don't see what you see. I think the trick there is to find out what they want to have happen. Share with them. You can still share with them an issue. Define what you see the issue as. And you might say to them, supposing we were to tackle that issue, what would that look like? They may still not buy into that it's a problem, but at least you'll have started them thinking about what they would do. Remember, slow down. It might take them a while longer to figure out it's a problem than you have, and so small steps, etc., etc.
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has any last thoughts or ideas while we're still here, we have about 5 more minutes.
These are great questions. Thank you very much. Okay. Alison, let's just show a couple of more slides.
Sure.
My propaganda, that's my sort of landing page where you'll find all my various websites. I blog a lot on solution focus in the organization. I tend to not talk so much about the solution focus process, but about how you apply it to things like strategic planning and so on, so that's there. If you want to know what it is I do, if you insist on knowing, that's my website. Credentials, this is an interesting one. So I've been peer reviewed by some colleagues, mostly in Europe, on that case I talked about a little bit before, which is the Children's Aid. I did it with the Peterborough, Lindsay, Kawartha Halliburton Children's Aid Society. It's a great case. Of course, if you're a tweeter, you can get me there. And my book, Fry Monkeys. The book focuses on why organizations need to, this is a strategic issue, stop talking about problems and get to solutions quicker. It's an efficiency and effectiveness thing. And it's got 3 stages. What's the benefit of switching to talking about solutions? Second stage is what are the ingredients we can use for solution focus to make it work? And then the third section is, I phoned up all my pals in Europe in particular and said, can you have some of your tools? And they let me put them in the book. It's a thin book, but it's got some great stuff in it. And Alison, over to you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and for your great questions.
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much, Alan. We really appreciate you doing this. You're one of the highest rated presenters at the Spotlight on Learning Conference, so we're really excited to have had you back today.
Thank you.
And if you'd like more information on the Ontario Literacy Coalition, you can find us at www.on.literacy.ca, and our Spotlight on Learning website for the conference, spotlightonlearning.ca. You can find Alan's presentation as well as many other presentations from the conference there, and we will also be posting this webinar up there probably next week. And we hope you will join us for our next webinar in June 7th. That's with Sarah Eaton, and she'll be doing some stuff on formal and informal learning. So thank you very much again, and thank you to everyone for joining us.
Alison, Alison, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
One last question. We'll post the recording. What about the download of the slides? Do people have to?
We'll be posting those. We can post those up with the recording as well. Yeah.
Good.
And any other resources and links and all that you'll be able to find on the Spotlight on Learning website.
And of course, MD wants.
We'll be sending that out to all the participants of this webinar.
Yeah, and MD's got any specific questions, feel free to go to my website and send me an email. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.